Hey, welcome back. Today we're continuing our study of Julius Caesar, and this time we're looking at Act 2. Last time we talked about how some of the characters are larger than life, and yet still very human. Last time we talked a bit about how in this play Shakespeare portrays his characters as following this larger than life tradition, and yet still being very grounded and human. We also looked at the growing tensions and allegiances and manipulations that happen in the politics of this play. Act 2, as I usually note in Shakespeare, is part of the rising action of the play. We're moving more and more towards the big event in Act 3. And so in this act, our characters still have a lot of choices available to them. Brutus is being pressured by Cassius to turn on Caesar and kill him. And we can see Cassius is having a strong influence on Brutus, but Brutus isn't all the way there yet. It's interesting because everybody comes to this play knowing that Caesar is going to die. It's a historical fact, everybody knows it, and yet Shakespeare plays with all of these tensions leading up to the moment. Could it go another way? One of my favorite things about Act 2, though, is that it explores the female characters of the play. It's really the only place in the play where we have female characters. We have wives of two of our most important characters. We have Brutus's wife, Porsha, and Caesar's wife, Calpurnia. And they and their relationship with their husbands are going to be explored in some depth in this act, in an interesting and contrasting way. So let's look at this act. Scene 1 begins with Brutus in his orchard, or his garden. And remember, this is the same night that we left off in. It's a terrible storm. And Brutus just decides to go, walking out in his yard in this storm. He can't sleep. He's been thinking about all of the things that have been going on lately. And so he pesters his young servant boy, Lucius, making the boy run insignificant errands for him, like to get a candle or to check the calendar. But in the midst of this, Brutus is soliloquizing. He's reflecting in his own mind on how he should approach the problem of Caesar. He says, "It must be by his death. And for my part, I know no personal cause to spurn at him, but for the general. He would be crowned. How that might change his nature, there's the question. It is the bright day that brings forth the adder, and that craves wary walking. Crown him? That, and then, I grant, we put a sting in him, that at his will he may do danger with. The abuse of greatness is, when it disjoins remorse from power, and to speak truth of Caesar, I have not known when his affections swayed more than his reason, but 'tis common proof that lowliness is young ambition's ladder, whereto the climber upward turns his face, but when he once attains the utmost round, he then unto the ladder turns his back, looks in the clouds, scorning the base degrees by which he did ascend. So Caesar may. Then, lest he may, prevent. And since the quarrel will bear no color for the thing he is, fashion it thus, that what he is augmented would run to these and these extremities, and therefore think him as a serpent's egg, which hatched would, in his kind, grow mischievous and kill him in the shell." Notice that everything there is conditional. Everything there is supposition. He may do. So Caesar may. That might change his nature. May, might. Brutus actually has no proof that Caesar is going to turn into a tyrant. He just has the adage, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And so if Caesar were to gain that crown, he would have a sting in him. We talked last time about the great metaphors used to describe Caesar in this story. Here Brutus uses another, a serpent. A dangerous, poisonous serpent. But Caesar is not a serpent now. He just has the potential to become a serpent with a sting. Rather, he is a serpent's egg, and Brutus has to crush him while he's still in the shell before he becomes dangerous. Argument is a bit problematic. Just because someone has the potential to do something wrong doesn't mean that you should punish them for it before they do it. But Brutus has a lot of people who have been playing with his mind a little bit. This is further illustrated because as his servant boy Lucius comes back in, he says, "Look, I found this note lying in the window. Someone chucked it in here." And we know what this note is. It's another one of Cassius's tricks. We saw that in Act 1. He's been planting all of these letters around to make Brutus think that the common people don't want Caesar as king. "Brutus, thou sleepest, awake and see thyself. Shall Rome, etc.? Speak, strike, redress. Brutus, thou sleepest, awake. Wake up, Brutus, and save us from the evil Caesar." As Brutus is mulling this over, he hears a knock at the gate. And in comes the conspiracy. And they come in all in their hoodies with their faces all covered and masked. And they look all kinds of suspicious. As Brutus hears this, he says, "They are the faction. O conspiracy, shamest thou to show thy dangerous brows by night, when evils are most free? O then by day, where wilt thou find a cavern dark enough to mask thy monstrous visage? Seek none, conspiracy. Hide it in smiles and affability." We had a similar idea in Hamlet, talking about how evil hides itself under a pleasant smile. Cassius greets Brutus and introduces him to all the fellow conspirators. Trebonius, Decius Brutus, we've already seen Casca and Cinna, and Metellus Cimber here. And there's a moment as Cassius pulls Brutus to the side to kind of warm him up to all of them, that Cinna and Casca look up and look at the sunrise. And they argue a bit about where exactly the sun is going to rise. And there's hints that what they're talking about is about the coming age, how they're bringing forth change here politically. Brutus comes in and shakes all of their hands, and now he's one of them. And so now that we have our conspiracy all together, it's time to settle certain points of business. So for the next big section of this scene, they discuss their plans. I want to point something out. They felt very strongly that they needed Brutus to legitimize their conspiracy. But now that he's involved, he's going to have very strong things to say about absolutely every decision that they make. And usually, his decisions will be very bad. First of all, Cassius says, "We all need to swear our resolution. Let's all swear, a pact on this." And Brutus is like, "No, we're not doing this as some secret club. We're doing this for the good of Rome. If you're not doing it for the right reasons, then there's no point you being here anyway." Okay. Cassius then brings up, should we include Cicero here? And everybody thinks that's a good idea, but then Brutus steps up and says, no, not Cicero. He's too much of an independent thinker. He won't want to join in something that somebody else started. Okay, that's fine. And then they get to the point of Mark Antony. Now, Mark Antony is a little bit of a difficulty because he is Caesar's, lapdog, Caesar's stooge. If we kill Caesar, how will Antony react? And Cassius says, yep, no, we need to kill him. Just do away with him so we don't have anything to worry about there. But Brutus disagrees because all he sees here is the symbol of it all. We're doing this for the good of Rome. We're not trying to be a bunch of wild, violent killers. The death of Caesar has to happen. It's necessary, but don't let's kill anybody else. Our course will seem too bloody, Caius Cassius, to cut the head off and then hack the limbs, like wrath and death and envy afterwards. For Antony is but a limb of Caesar. Let us be sacrificers, but not butchers, Caius. We all stand up against the spirit of Caesar, and in the spirit of men there is no blood. Oh, that we then could come by Caesar's spirit and not dismember Caesar. But alas, Caesar must bleed for it. And gentle friends, let's kill him boldly, but not wrathfully. Let's carve him as a dish fit for the gods, not hew him as a carcass fit for hounds. And let our hearts, as subtle masters do, stir up their servants to an act of rage, and after seem to chide them. This shall make our purpose necessary and not envious, which so appearing to the common eyes, we shall be called purgers, not murderers. And for Mark Antony, think not of him, for he can do no more than Caesar's arm when Caesar's head is off. And so we come to another metaphor for Caesar. Caesar is a sacrifice. Brutus sees the death of Caesar as necessary for the state. It's the only way we can save Rome from tyranny. And yet, I'm not killing him vindictively. I'm not killing him because I envy his power or his position. Now, some of the other people may kill him for that reason. But Brutus kills him out of honor. And so he sees Caesar's death as a sacrifice he needs to make for the good of his country. Cassius tries to press the point, but Brutus brushes it off. And so Antony is pricked to live, which is going to cause them much grief later on. The last point of business is whether or not Caesar will go to work today. We have to make sure he comes to the capital so that we can kill him there. And so Decius Brutus says, oh, don't worry, I can take care of that. I know how to flatter him. I butter him up, all while telling him that he's the kind of person who doesn't listen to flattery. And then I can get him to do whatever I want. And finally, they decide to take on one more conspirator, Caius Ligarius. We'll see him in just a moment. The conspirators all exit and leave, Brutus standing there in his garden. And at this point, in comes Porsha, Brutus's wife. And we have this wonderful exchange between the two of them through most of the rest of this scene. It's well worth comparing this exchange to the exchange in Henry IV Part 1 between Hotspur and Lady Hotspur. There's a lot of similarities. But Porsha comes out and sees Brutus standing in the yard. And remember, it's been storming all night. And so Brutus is like, go back to bed, honey, it's fine. But Porsha says, you've ungently, Brutus, stole from my bed. And yesternight at supper, you suddenly arose and walked about, musing and sighing, with your arms across. And when I asked you what the matter was, you stared upon me with ungentle looks. I urged you further, and you scratched your head, and too impatiently stamped with your foot. Yet I insisted, yet you answered not. But with an angry wafture of your hand, gave sign for me to leave you. So I did, fearing to strengthen that impatience which seemed too much enkindled, and withal hoping it was but an effect of humor, which sometime hath this hour with every man. It will not let you eat, nor talk, nor sleep. And could it work so much upon your shape as it hath much prevailed on your condition, I should not know you, Brutus. Dear my lord, make me acquainted with your cause of grief. So she notes he's been different lately. He's been acting very, very strangely. He won't eat, he won't sleep, he won't talk to her. She knows something's wrong and she wants to know what it is. Brutus's reply is, I am not well in health, and that is all. So he tries to brush off saying, I'm just a little bit sick, honey. But Portia's going to have none of that. As I mentioned, there are lots of logical arguments throughout this play, and Porsha is one of the best at drilling straight to the point and calling him on absolutely every fallacy. Brutus is wise, and were he not in health, he would embrace the means to come by it. Is Brutus sick? And is it physical to walk unbraced and suck up the humors of the dank morning? What, is Brutus sick, and he will steal out of his wholesome bed to dare the vile contagion of the night, and tempt the roomy and unpurged air to add unto his sickness? No, my Brutus, you have some sick offense within your mind, which, by the right and virtue of my place, I ought to know of. And upon my knees I charm you, by my once commended beauty, by all your vows of love, and that great vow which did incorporate and make us one, that you unfold to me yourself, your half, why you are heavy, and what men tonight have had resort to you, for here have been some 6 or 7 who did hide their faces even from darkness. Porsha pulls out all the stops. Very quickly she says, oh, so you're sick, and that's why you're walking in the yard in the rain. No, I'm not buying that. You're sick in your head, but you have something bothering you in your mind. And so, because I am your wife, the other half of this relationship, you need to share that with me by right and virtue of my place. And if that's not enough, look at this. I'm going to get down on my knees and beg you and charm you with the beauty that you once appreciated, and with all those promises you made to share everything with me. And by the way, if you brush me off saying you're sick again, let me just point out, you were hanging out with a bunch of strangely masked men just a minute ago. You can't just brush that away. Brutus, seeing her kneeling before him, says, kneel not, gentle Porsha. And she continues, I should not need, if you were gentle, Brutus, within the bond of marriage. Tell me, Brutus, is it accepted that I should know no secrets that appertain to you? Am I yourself, but as it were in sort or limitation, to keep with you at meals, comfort your bed, and talk to you sometimes? Dwell I but in the suburbs of your good pleasure? If it be no more, Porsha is Brutus's harlot, not his wife. So is this just a physical relationship to you, Brutus? I'm just a pretty face, someone to sit by in meals? You don't actually really value our marriage enough to share your secrets with me? I'm some kind of prostitute to you? Is that what I am? She's really calling him on it. And Brutus says, you are my true and honorable wife, as dear to me as the ruddy drops that visit my sad heart. I value you like I value my blood. And that's nice to say, but Portia's still going to call him on it and say, if this were true, then I should know this secret. I grant I am a woman, but withal a woman that Lord Brutus took to wife. There's that larger-than-life character again. I'm married to the one and only Brutus. I grant I am a woman, but withal a woman well-reputed, Cato's daughter. Think you I am no stronger than my sex, being so fathered and so husbanded? Tell me your counsels, I will not disclose them. So she says, oh, you think because I'm a woman, I'm not strong enough to, know your secrets? You want to see how tough I am? She says, I have made strong proof of my constancy, giving myself a voluntary wound here in the thigh. Can I bear that with patience and not my husband's secrets? So to prove how tough she is, and this is where she gets a little bit over the top, she stabs herself in the thigh and is like, look, honey, look, I'm tough. I can take it. I can take bodily injury. I can take your secrets. And Brutus is a little blown away, and he's like, whoa, okay, all right, I'll tell you. But at that moment, there's a knock on the door, and so Brutus is going to have to talk to Caius Ligarius, but he promises Porsha he'll tell her everything. Caius Ligarius is our last member of the conspiracy, and he is sick. He's been coughing into his handkerchief, and Brutus and Ligarius go back and forth for a moment, playing with the idea of wellness and sickness. Ligarius is like, I'm well enough to do a deed like this, especially since we're going to take a well man, Caesar, and make him sick, take him down physically. All right, so they set out to join the conspiracy. Scene 2. After this wonderful exchange between Brutus and Porsha, we're going to see an exchange between Caesar and Calpurnia. And it's set up somewhat in contrast. All night long, Calpurnia has been tossing and turning in her bed and crying out in her sleep, help ho, they murder Caesar! And Caesar has not slept very well. Not to mention, the awful storm. And so he decides to get his omens checked this morning by the official priests and sacrificers, and they go sacrifice an animal. While he's waiting for the report to come back, he talks with Calpurnia. And Calpurnia says, last night there was those horrible storms, there were all the strange signs we saw, the lions whelping in the streets, we saw the, blood rain coming down, we saw the mighty armies fighting in the sky, ghosts shrieking. Oh, Caesar, these things are beyond all use, and I do fear them, she concludes. And Caesar's like, well, everybody saw the storm. It doesn't mean it particularly applies to me. And Calpurnia says, no. Big signs like this only come for the death of princes. This only happens when somebody really important dies, and who else is more important than you, honey? And Caesar has this wonderful line, which is pretty pretentious, but it's also a cool line. Cowards die many times before their deaths. The valiant never taste of death but once. Of all the wonders that I yet have heard, it seems to me most strange that men should fear, seeing that death, a necessary end, will come when it will come. If you're a coward and you're afraid of death all the time, then you have to suffer with your fear throughout all of life. But if you're not a coward, the only time you suffer is the very last moment. So, better just suck it up and be brave about it. This is going to mirror something that Cassius is going to say later, so keep your ears out for it in the next act. At this moment, the message from the sacrifice comes in, and it turns out that the animal had no heart. How did that work? I don't know. But it's a really, really weird and really bad sign. Caesar decides to interpret it in his own way, saying, the gods do this in shame of cowardice. Caesar should be a beast without a heart if he should stay home today for fear. Heartless. No, Caesar shall not. Danger knows full well that Caesar is more dangerous than he. We are two lions littered in one day. I, the elder and more terrible, and Caesar shall go forth. I'm more dangerous than danger, baby. Oh, Caesar. But Calpurnia throws herself at him and says, please, please, please don't go to work today. I have such a bad feeling about it. Let Mark Antony tell them that you are not well. And Caesar finally capitulates and he says, okay, honey, for you, I won't go to work today. But just at that moment, in comes Decius Brutus, and we know that he's on a mission to flatter Caesar and get him to go to work. And Caesar says, I'm not going to work today. And when Calpurnia is like, he's sick, Caesar's like, no, just tell them I will not. My will says no. And Decius starts flattering, being like, but that's not a good excuse. They're gonna, wonder why. Can you tell me why? And so Caesar begins to tell Calpurnia's dream. And we get the story of why she was having such bad dreams last night. She dreamed that his statue was standing there and all of a sudden it started bleeding everywhere and all these Romans were washing their hands in his blood. It's a pretty gross dream. But Decius is like, oh, you misinterpreted. It just means that, you're giving life to Rome. And also the Senate was about to give you the crown today, and if you don't show up, they may rethink it. And so Caesar completely swallows that whole and turns to Calpurnia and says, "How foolish do your fears seem now, Calpurnia? I am ashamed I did yield to them. Give me my robe, for I will go." And then, at that moment, all of the other conspirators show up, as well as Mark Antony. And he's like, "Hey, everybody showed up to bring me to work. How fun. Let's all have a drink together like friends." Which is a line that makes Brutus wince a little bit. He's like, "Ugh, like friends. I'm about to kill you." Scene 3 is a short scene where we get this character whose name is Artemidorus, and somehow he's figured out about the conspiracy. And so he's like, I've got to tell Caesar before he gets killed. And so he's written out this note exposing all of the senators, and he's got to get it into the hands of Caesar. Will it work? We'll find out later. Finally, the last scene of Act 2 is another scene with Porsha, and we see the effect of their conversation upon her. She may not be quite as tough as she made herself out to be to Brutus, because now that she knows his secret, she is super anxious and wondering what's going to happen with him. So she's basically standing outside of her house, all jittery, and trying to find out, oh, did you hear anything? Did I hear something coming from the Capitol? And she starts taking it out on Lucius. Poor little Lucius. He gets pushed and pulled around constantly by both Brutus and Porsha. But she tells him to run to the Capitol really quick to Brutus. And he's like, why? Do I take a message? I mean, am I supposed to ask him for something? What? But she's so anxious she can't even remember to give him a message. At that moment, in comes the soothsayer. And he's heading up to try to catch Caesar on the way to the Capitol, because he's going to warn Caesar one more time. And so the scene ends with Porsha still waiting in anticipation, wondering what's happening to Brutus right now, wondering whether his attempt on Caesar's life is going to work or whether Brutus is going to be, horribly killed in the process. And so we leave her sitting there anxious. Tonight's top story: sacrificial animal contains no heart. How did this creature survive without a pulmonary artery? And what does it say about attempts to dissolve the Senate and place Caesar in power? All that and more shortly. But first, the weather report. Good evening, have we got a weather report for you tonight? The current front moving in not only will bring heavy thunderstorms, but potential for lions whelping in the street, slaves on fire, ghosts, blood rain, armies fighting in the sky. In short, it definitely bodes assassination and the death of princes. I don't think it looks good for Caesar to go to the Capitol tomorrow morning. Thanks for watching. You can click to subscribe or click to watch Act 3, or go back to Act 1 if you want to review that. And I will see you next time. Bye-bye.